To have her share her story with us tonight. Andrea.
Hi, everyone. I'm Andrea, and I'm an alcoholic. Thanks, Kim, for asking me to share my story. I so greatly appreciate it. Okay. In all seriousness, even though we're locked down or in quarantine or self-isolation, whatever the case may be, wherever you are in the world, I am so thankful that we have this outlet to still connect to alcoholics all over the world. I never would have thought in a million years that I'd be sharing my experience, strength, and hope with all of you. So today, by the grace of God and the fellowship and program of Alcoholics Anonymous, I've been sober since September 26, 2015. Bit of my background. I was raised in an alcoholic home, and although that had nothing to do with me becoming an alcoholic, it actually delayed it. I was scared of alcohol. I saw what it was doing in my home. I saw what it was doing to my parent, and I wanted no part of that. So I didn't partake until I was older. And through high school, it was more experimenting with other issues, and it wasn't until, it's really funny, but a girlfriend had asked me. In BC, our legal drinking age is 19. And at 18, a friend had come to me and she was like, do you want to go to Alberta, where the legal drinking age is 18, so we can go and party? And I was like, yeah, quit my job. We went to Alberta and set up camp because we couldn't afford a hotel, so we were tenting it. First stop was the liquor store because, hey, now it's okay, we're legal. We participated in a pub crawl, so we went from bar to bar, and I honestly can't even remember how we got from bar to bar. I imagine it must have been a bus. And that's where it kind of started for me. We partied for 17 hours straight, and I was hooked. Lincoln Bill's story, I had arrived. Suddenly, I had more confidence, and I was prettier, and I got this attention, and but then, all good things come to an end. At the end of that, I got in a fight with my girlfriend, and Andrea was taking a Greyhound bus back to BC. And now I'm about 5 months shy of turning 19 here. And all I could think about was getting back to that scene. I was absolutely hooked. It was fun at that time. And, I turned 19, and I became a 6-night-a-week party girl. I had, every night of the week, I had a different nightclub or bar that I went to. And, I bounced from, as much as I bounced from bar to bar, I bounced from guy to guy, because, I wasn't really making much money. So I was using people wherever I went, right? As long as you could give me what I wanted. And then, once that was done, I had no use for you. This was the type of person I was becoming, or, I was developing. I had developed even in my younger age. I would use and abuse people. All of my jobs at that time were conducive to my lifestyle. I wouldn't, there was no way I was doing 9 to 5 shifts, right? I did 1 to 9s, and they were usually close to the pub. I worked for like a check cashing company, so I would go to the nearest bar where I knew you had money that you could blow. So I was constantly using people. That's kind of what developed. I just became I like to call myself a douchebag. And then I ended up getting, this was going on for a few years, and I wasn't growing. I didn't go to school, and now my jobs are getting a bit. I was contemplating becoming an escort. This is where my disease was taking me, and I ended up getting a job at a gentleman's club, at a strip club, local strip club. And, I wasn't doing it because I was putting myself through school or supporting my family. This was just where I was headed. And I was so conflicted because, as it says in our big book, like Into Action, we lead this double life. The alcoholic leads a double life, and we're the actor, and we want the outer world. We present our stage character to the outer world, and I wanted people to see me as this good girl, and I wasn't. And like on page 62, again, many of us had a moral and philosophical convictions galore, but we could not live up to them even though we would have liked to. That's what I wanted, and I couldn't do that. And so I decided my solution is another guy, but this time he's in Australia. So now I'm going to do a geographical change. That will solve everything. And so I have everything lined up. Not honestly, when you apply for your work visa, you have to show that you have X amount of dollars in your bank account. So I just borrowed money from my mom, took a photocopy of my balance, and presented that to the Australian consulary, and I got my temporary visa. I gave it back to my mom. So I was essentially going to Australia with $0 and relying on some dude to meet me at the airport. So of course I chickened out of that plan. It just didn't seem like a feasible plan. So plan B. In walks my starter husband, I like to call him. And I warned him from the get-go, I could have a problem with alcohol. If you think I do have a problem, you can put me in rehab, right? So I was putting it on other people to diagnose me with the problem. I couldn't admit that I had a problem. So again, I now at this point, he's Catholic. So in order to get married in the church, his family is very religious, and so I became a Catholic. I thought, this is great. This is what I've always, this is what I've needed, God in my life. And so I went to catechism. I was like so serious about religion. I'm doing the rosary every day, and I'm going to church, and they would bring this idol, and I'd put it on my dining room table, and I'd pray to it, and I would go to the casino, and I would drink, and I would start making out with some random person in the bathroom. I did not have religion in my life. I had an excuse to go and do all these awful things and just ask for forgiveness. And so like people hide alcohol. Well, I was going like from different church to different church, so the priest wouldn't know it was me over and over each week, confessing my sins. I went back to college. I thought, yes, a career. I'll get a great job, and that way I won't have time to drink. But when I finished college, I found out I was pregnant with my daughter. And those feelings of that restless, irritable discontent, they didn't go away. As it's described in the doctor's opinion. And I only got angrier and angrier and more resentful. Marriage, this was not the life I had dreamed of. I don't know what I dreamed of, but, even backtracking, marriage and motherhood was not kind of in my plans. I was always too selfish and self-centered. I knew that, but here I was married, and now I'm with child, and I'm trying really hard. My ex and I bought a house. I'm going to settle down and raise this child. And after 18 months, I split. So that was our first separation. But we were still, working on things, and he's really trying, and I'm kind of trying. I've got another person on the side, so half in, half out, and again, my ex is trying to do everything. We had bought this house, now he's renovated it. Now he goes and buys he bought me a car from Texas. So he flew me down to Texas to drive this car back, and he's trying to just fill this void with stuff, right? Materialistic stuff, try and make me happy. And it was all temporary. Nothing materialistic was filling my void. So on my way back from, I'm driving this beautiful car, and I've got this guy on the side, and he happens to live in California. So my husband buys me this car, and I stop and visit my boyfriend in California before driving home. Like, these are the douchey things I did. It was awful, horrible. And the guilt, shame, remorse, like all that continues, and I'm only getting further and further into my disease, and nothing is changing. But I'm not looking at alcohol as the issue at all. I just thought it was just an asshole. We get back together, and now I'm pregnant with baby number 2. Again, just not the solutions that I was looking for, but this is life, right? And now he starts cooking wine in our basement, because that's what's going to make me happy. And now it's an excuse to just party. I took my jug of wine. I met a neighbor down the street, and she drank like me. And so I would bring my jug of wine, and I'd go a few houses down. And all my ex asked was that, like, this is how pathetic I was. All he asked was that I come home for 6 a.m. so he could go to work, and I could look after the kids. We had a crappy existence. And even that little that he was asking of me suddenly became like it was too much of a chore. And in spring 2008, I left. I left a 4.5 and a 1.5-year-old. And and this time there was no reconciliation, and I still didn't look at drinking as my issue. 2009, we go to court, and the judge, sides with him and his family, and, understandably so. And I lose custody of my kids. Mm-hmm. And at the time, I wasn't that broken up about it, if I'm being completely honest. As some people can stop for their families and their kids, and that's great. I just wasn't one of those people. I was so stuck in self. That my babies it just didn't matter to me. And, my drinking only continued. But I'm holding on to a job, and I'm still functioning. I'm taking care of bills. I had to claim bankruptcy after our separation. He was smart. All the debt was in my name, and all the assets were in his name. So, I kudos to him for that. So I have to claim bankruptcy, and I crawl out of that. So I'm still doing all these things. I'm functioning, right? And I think I'm doing this great job. And then I get into another relationship, because that always is a great idea. And same forewarning, I could have this problem, and if you think I do, so again, I'm putting it on someone else. But now they're kind of counting my drinks, so it's not as fun, right? Definitely not cooking wine in the basement. There was only, but the problem is I'm still there, and I'm still the asshole. I'm still going out, and I'm doing not very nice things. And there was only one time during that relationship where the consequences, I actually quit drinking for 3 months. I white knuckled it the entire time, and it was only because they were gearing up to leave, and it wasn't in my plan. I didn't want them to go because of my own selfish motives. I wasn't ready to be on my own. So after that 3 months, I celebrated. I came home with a bottle of wine, and that was how I did it. I did it, right. I did that 3 months, and but I obsessed about it for the entire time, not understanding what that was. And again, I tried to drink like a normal person, and now I find a metaphysical store where they sell crystals, and I come across this crystal called an amethyst, and its name actually translates into not drunk. So it was for addiction, and I'm like, oh, this is my answer. I'm gonna do crystals. So like, 2 please. And I go home with these, oh my God, the insanity of it. So I go home with these crystals, and I honestly have myself convinced that first night, because I don't even think I finished my 1 glass of wine, and I was like, oh my God, this is the answer. This thing works. But then the next night I just drank double. So crystals don't work. They are not the answer. So at the end of the day, this relationship ends because, again, I'm part of the relationship, and now I'm on my own, and this is where my drinking really escalates. I'm still functioning. I still hold a job. The same job. I've actually held the same job for 12 years, which is it floors me, because 6 months, I get bored really easily. And so I'm shocked that I've held the same job, but I'm holding this job, and I have a home, I have a car, I'm able to, buy groceries, and I'm taking care of my kids financially. And, but I have nothing. I'm this empty shell, and I look around. I'm drinking daily now, and I look around my home, and I've got nothing and no one. And so now I'm wallowing, right? The self-pity is getting really bad, and I ended up buying a hamster for company, like just so I'd have some background noise. And I'm getting suicidal now at this point. Like, what am I doing here? This is it. I'm living in a basement suite that seriously was like a dungeon. It was cement, it was awful. It was like this little bunker. I used to laugh and say it was my bunker, but it was pathetic. And now, and for some reason, I would pick Sunday nights as like my night to get really, really drunk. So I go into work completely hungover or still drunk, and I work for a surgeon, and so I'm dealing with patients, multiple patients every single day, and I'm angry, and I'm not tolerant, and I have no empathy. And now my boss is starting to look at me like, what's going on with you? And that right there, the fear of perhaps losing my financial security, is what finally made me start looking at, maybe I have a problem here. So I decide maybe it's time to start getting honest with somebody. So I made an appointment with my family doctor for a different issue, physical or something. But I had that appointment, so I'm starting to think maybe I should talk to her. Maybe I should be honest. And here's where the God shots start coming. So it's about mid-September, and I go in to see my family doctor, and she has this just a note on our wall, just a piece of paper, and it says, "I can't help you if you're not honest with me." So at the end of our visit, she asked if there was anything else. And I said, yeah, I said, "I think I drink too much." And she asked me how much, and I told her, and her eyes kind of bugged out, and she left the room for a minute, and she came back, and 4 days later I was in to see a drug and alcohol counselor. And he made me sign this contract that I wouldn't drink for like 2 weeks, and I honestly had a panic attack. I just about died in his office. I was like, 2 weeks? Like, are you serious? Who can stop for 2 weeks? I've been daily drinking for months now, and you want me to just stop? And so I signed it, and he just suggested AA. And I never even thought of it, but I had been to Alateen as a kid. And why I never thought of AA for myself, well, I wasn't ready to admit I even had a problem. So I went back to my office and I looked up AA meetings, and I had lived in this area of town that it wasn't the greatest area, and I'm being very judgmental at this time. And I'm like, ooh, yeah, I'll go to that meeting because I won't be like anyone else there. That's the judgmental part of myself, right? I understand now fully we're all the same, but that's not how I felt at the beginning. And I go in to this meeting, and this responsible member kind of pulls me aside after and kind of calls me on my BS. And he says, "Meet me at this other meeting in a completely different city." And so I do. And then he says, "Meet me at this other meeting on a Wednesday." So it started on a Monday. Now it's a Wednesday. He's like, "There's great women, great sobriety." And the following Monday, same thing, takes me to this other meeting that then became my home group. Now that's day 8. And day 9, I'm done with this. How do you function without alcohol? So I wanted to go to the liquor store. And my car took me to that second meeting. And I walk in, and I'm a mess, right? I'm bawling, and I'm just it was ugly. And in walks a friend that I had known for over 30 years. Both his mom and my mom are friends. And as soon as I saw him, I wanted to bolt, right? I'm like, "Oh my God, there's someone else I know here in an AA meeting." Like, not even stopping to think, like, they're in an AA meeting for a reason, right? And he turns around, he sees me, and he sits beside me, and there was a comfort, I comfort in that, okay. So he didn't shame me for being here. He's sitting here beside me, and it's comforting. And so I start listening kind of for the first time. And after the meeting, he takes my number, and it facilitated me meeting my sponsor. Arranged for me to meet my sponsor, or for the lady who then turned out to be my sponsor. And then she suggests, going to the Big Book study. I was super thankful that I lived in an area where Tony, I know most of you know Tony now because of the Big Book studies on this Zoom meeting. So he was facilitating it on Wednesday nights. And so I was extremely lucky to get into that and get into the book right away. After reading the doctor's opinion, I finally understood what my problem was. I had never really understood alcoholism. I could call my mom an alcoholic, but I couldn't tell you what it was. And so finally I could relate when they described the allergy and the malady. I was like, oh, it was fine. It was a relief. I was like, oh my God, like, yes, that explains why. I'd be like, okay, just after 2, and now I've had about 8, and I'm puking, and I'm still going. It just boggled my mind, and here it is in black and white what my issue is. And I got into the middle with a lot of great members with great sobriety, And, they took me under their wing, and just, that loneliness, I didn't have to be alone in this anymore. And it was such a huge relief. So now that I'm able to pretty quickly able to fully concede to my innermost self that I am suffering from alcoholism. Now I know I can never safely drink again. Now where do I go from there? Right? What's the solution? So I could get into start getting in and applying the solution in my life. And, all my sponsor said to me was, I had a problem with God, right? Obviously, I'm not a really religious person. I don't really believe in, a God, or I didn't at that time. And, all she said was, are you willing? That's all that's required. And I was like, well, I'm not the end all be all of the universe. So yes, I'm willing to believe in something greater than myself. And that's all it took. And so I got into the rest of the steps, and, I did my step 5, and nothing happened for me. And I guess I wasn't completely honest and thorough, and that's no fault of my sponsors. I'm, not blaming. It was me, right? I was obviously holding stuff back, and Tony knew I was doing my step 5, and he asked me at the big book, so he's like, hey, how'd it go? And I was like, I don't know. I don't feel anything. And he's like, well, you weren't honest and thorough. And he just walked away. And I was like, you asshole. Like I was convinced at that time I was honest and thorough, and oh my God, I held resentment against that man. But he was absolutely right. And I had to really look at myself and dig deep. And luckily my sponsor was doing a smaller big book study facilitated by Joanne in her home. And so I just started all over again. I'm dry. I don't know, 8-9 months dry. Not sure how I'm doing it, but I'm not a pleasant person to be around. So I start all over again, and I do my step 5 with Joanne this time, and just the shit that we managed to pull out. I just say the shit from the bowels of my soul, like stuff that I didn't even know I was holding on to, and I didn't intentionally mean to hold on to, came out. And finally, I got it. I got what that step is supposed to mean, right? I felt that relief, and just okay, where do we go from here? And we have to continue with the work, right? And now I'm about 14 months sober after this, and it says, are we willing to make amends? And I had made the easy ones, but I wasn't willing to make amends to my ex. Wasn't willing. And the only one that it made suffer was really me. So now I'm in a relationship with Dan, and his sponsor is actually married. He's in the fellowship as well, and his sponsor is married to my sponsor. And I had told him, I said, I'm never making amends to Martin. And he was like, really? So we go for dinner with our sponsors, and he rats me out. He throws me under the bus, and he's like, did you hear Andrea's never going to make amends to Martin? And they're like, oh. And they didn't shame me or, get mad or upset. They did what good sponsors do, and they just suggested a solution. And his sponsor suggested that I read pages 417 and 552.
Just keep talking about solutions.
And pages 552 for me, that was huge. It's resentments. And it says to pray for whoever you have a resentment towards, and for like 2 weeks or something. And so I did it for even longer. I did it for 3 weeks. And at the end of 3 weeks, I'm a mess. I'm in the middle of my floor. I feel so stuck. I'm chained to my past, right? I'm chained to my past. I can't move forward. And I'm on my living room floor and I'm just in tears. And I said, I don't know what to do. And all I hear is, you know what you need to do. I gotta call my ex. that's what I need to do, right? And I did. So I go into my office, and thankfully I work alone a couple days a week. So I get in my office, and I make that phone call. Now normally he doesn't pick up my calls, and he did. He did, and we had a really good conversation. And I was able to make amends to him and thank him for being the parent that I couldn't be. And I said, do you think we can do this divorce amicably? And up to this point, I neglected to mention he'd been sending me divorce papers for about 3 years. And I basically would write "fuck you" and send them back to his lawyer. I just wasn't dealing with it. And so I said, he's like, this is what I've been trying to do for years. And I said, I know, I'm really sorry. Will you meet me at the courthouse on Thursday? And that was 2 days later. I will have all the paperwork done, and let's do this. And he said, yeah.
No.
So 2 days later, we meet at the courthouse, and I pay for the fees because I know that I've been pissing away his money, right? He's been trying to pay for a lawyer. And so I paid for the fees. And basically I just said, no changes. I had to let go of that whole entitlement I felt, right? He got the house and all that stuff. I got the debt. And it was like, if I go after anything from him, I'm taking it away from my kids, and they've already lost so much, right? I had to let that go. I've already done enough damage. So we meet at the courthouse, we get everything done, and the only changes I made to that order was I increased my child support payment. And and I'm not saying that as like you're such a good, it was just the right thing to do, right? So we leave that courthouse, and I make amends to him again, this time in person. And, we even hugged at the end of it. I don't know what that did for him. Not my business to know what it did for him, but I did what it needed for me. I finally felt free. I felt the 9-step promises coming true for me in that moment. I practically left that courthouse skipping. I didn't, but I really wanted to. He's been able to get remarried. I've gotten remarried. And I have wonderful stepkids, right? And I'm part of a blended family. And I'd love to say that the relationship with my kids is better. Unfortunately, that's not part of my story yet. In September 2018, I got an email from my ex that my kids were going to refuse to get in my car. I used to go and drive and pick them up, and they were just going to refuse to get in my car. And I had to take that to God, right? I mean, that hurts. But this is my consequence, right? I did some shitty things to my family. And so I had to let go, basically with love, right? And I hope and pray every single day that I'll be able to have a relationship with my children again. I hear that hope in these rooms, right? I've heard my story in these rooms, almost identical. And so that's, I do remain hopeful. It's not going to take me out. I'm so thankful. And with my own relationship with my dad, it was kind of put in my heart one night that how can I expect my kids to forgive me if I can't forgive my own father, who I'd been estranged from for most of my life.
You're sharing tonight?
And so, you know what? I swallowed my pride and I reached out to my own dad. And now I've been able to rebuild a beautiful relationship with him. I never thought that would happen.
Haven't, eh?
I'll make me tear up.
You missed me?
Mm-hmm.
I'm right here.
And with his side of the family, I thought that these people hated me. I thought that they disowned me decades ago. They didn't want to have anything to do with me. And now I call my great uncle, and he ends every conversation with, "I love you." And that is so huge to me because, again, I thought this was, someone who didn't want anything to do with me. This program and my higher power have completely changed my life. I went from a liar and a serial cheater, and I used people. If you weren't giving me what I want, I just threw you away. I had no respect for anybody. I was a terrible friend. And now I have the trust of my husband. He is a sick alcoholic too, so it's a bit questionable. No, I'm kidding. All kidding aside, he trusts me, and I have women that I sponsor, and they trust me. I said, you can do your 5 with other people. Again, that insecurity comes back, and they're like, no, of course I'm going to do my 5 with you. And that's huge to me. That was so heartwarming that women would want to share anything with me because I couldn't be trusted before. So I see God working in my life now. I'm experiencing, and service. Service is a huge part in my sobriety too. Not only in meetings, but I'm also the general service rep for my home group. I attend district meetings and go to the quarterlies and stuff and see the business side of AA now, and that's amazing. I love it. And now I get to help Kim on this Zoom meeting, and just thank you for giving me that opportunity, because that's just amazing to me as well, and to meet all of you. And for the first time, I'm experiencing what it feels like to live freely. And I pray that I never go back to what I was. That I don't want alcohol to ever be my master again. That's exactly what it was. I was chained to that bottle. So I'll continue to pray to stay in the middle of AA. I once heard that it's harder to fall away from this if you stay in the middle, right? It's harder to fall off that edge. And today I can honestly say that I am a grateful, recovered alcoholic, and I am happy, joyous, and free. So thanks for letting me share.
Thank you so much, Andrea.